Hey, welcome to the Extra Podcast. My name is Daniel. I'm joined around the table with Paul Siemens and Andy Steiger.
Good to be here.
Yeah, me too.
Good to have you guys here. Do you know, it's funny.
It's been a while.
It has been a while.
For me too.
I know, you guys are both on here because usually we have Greg and Jeff, but both of them canceled on us last minute.
They're bums.
And as this kind of goes, you know, in the radio business, Andy, in the radio business,
That's the way it goes,
people
Daniel.
cancel. You got to find new people. And thankfully, we get to bring back some veterans to the show.
Been on the bench, Daniel, and it's good to be back. No,
Yeah.
actually, I haven't
It's going to be back in the country, isn't it?
Yeah,
Andy?
I haven't been around for a while.
Yeah.
What?
Where'd you go?
I was off in Korea, South Korea, in fact. We were doing some filming for the Human Project, which went fantastic.
They didn't want to bring you to North Korea to help with that? They didn't want to talk about human rights up
Andy,
there?
do you sell any of your Human Project mugs there, too?
Yeah, I was out there hawking Human Project mugs. You know what?
Perfect.
By the way, this mug honestly gets a lot of interest. I've had a lot of people ask me for a Human Project mug. I'm thinking I might need to get these released before March. People need a mug, Daniel.
They do need a Human Project
I like
mug.
it. I like it. It's
And
got
so
the
you were
hands
in-
kind of
by
reaching
the way-
across towards each other, like
Yeah, Meekin and H.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
My mom
but it's
didn't.
also that kind of reaching towards friendship. Towards. I don't know if you were thinking that.
I was.
Nice.
My mom thought it was just some random piece of artwork, which was great. Glad to know that it totally escaped her attention, that's an H with hands, but it sure is. So that was good. While we were filming, some people thought we were just there to interview Pastor Lee from the movie The Dropbox, and we did interview him, which was fantastic. It was great to hear his story and to learn about the incredible ministry that he's doing there, rescuing abandoned children. But we were actually there filming a short story. So we in between filming the short story, we were there with Power to Change, by the way, and we were working with Campus Crusade for Christ Korea. We did this interview. So yeah, man, it was great, and I'm looking forward to seeing this come out. The question that we were dealing with was what leads to human flourishing, and so we were telling basically a story about this couple that's giving up on relationship, and it's a theme that is quite true of what's going on in Korea right now. And in fact, this was interesting. While I was there, Steve Kim came with me, and he obviously speaks Korean, so he was translating. But they were saying that in Korea, they have an acronym to describe this culture, their young adults.
Oh.
And it's called the culture that's given up on the five. Now they're called the culture that's given up on everything. But the five main things are giving up on a job, giving up on dating, giving up on marriage, giving up on children, and giving up on a home. And so it was interesting too, though, because when we were taking a taxi on one of our last days, without not even being prompt, the taxi driver started talking to Steve. And apparently in Korean, they have this word that means human beauty. And he was talking about how Korea is losing its human beauty. And the reason he was saying that was because the culture is becoming so competitive that people don't see each other's humanity any longer. They just see each other as competition. And I think it's quite telling, because often if we want to know where we're going as a culture, you often look to places like, Japan or Seoul, South Korea, and these other, technologically advanced places, and they really are. And I think that is a challenge that we are dealing with, and we will continue to deal with a culture that is giving up on each other. And you see that, by the way, with just how connected they are with their devices. In Korea, they have over 300 digital addiction rehab centers to help people, re-engage in society again. I mean, and it's absolutely a mess. And I'll just tell you one other story. We were filming this one scene with the guy getting into a subway train. And you would have thought, when you see it, it'll creep you out, because you would have thought we paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, to rent this subway station and set up this scene where, people almost look like mannequins as our actor got into the subway, and the entire train is full of people glued to their devices.
Yeah.
It was almost too on the mark. It was quite disturbing, actually.
Well, there's like professional gaming leagues, in terms of I can't remember the name. But you've got games like Dota, which is, I don't remember what that stands for, DOTA. That's an acronym for something. But even in the U.S., you can go down to Seattle and you can go to Key Arena, and there will be 10,000 people there watching guys play their video games. So this isn't
I've heard of that.
This isn't 10,000 people playing video games. This is 10,000 spectators watching guys play their video games. And South Korea is one of the biggest proponents of this. Guys who are professional game players are like celebrities, like LeBron James is here, or like Wayne Gretzky or Connor McDavid are here. That's how these gamers are over there. And so for what you're talking about, that kind of speaks to that, right? Mm-hmm. Like people aren't interacting with other people. They're interacting with their screens, and then they're even what they want to watch. They want to watch other people on screens.
It was interesting. I think, Daniel, you and I were talking about this, that right now that there are more people that tend to play video games, like sports video games, than are watching sports.
Yeah, I think it was a weird stat where from ages 15 to 20, mid-20s, something like that. I don't know the exact stat. More people play the FIFA video game than actually play soccer in real life. And I totally found this true when I was at university. I remember hearing, because I played a little bit of college.
Is that like in the West? Or is that worldwide?
I think it's worldwide.
Really?
Yeah, anywhere there's video game reach.
Wow.
And so I remember, it's more people play the video game than watch the sport. That was the stat.
Oh, okay.
And so you would have, like, I would meet people when I was playing football in Chicago who I would talk to them and say, oh man, so who's your NFL team? And they would say, oh, I don't watch NFL. But they play a ton of Madden. Like, they play the video game.
Right.
And so it's like the NFL league only exists to fill the spots in the game. Mm-hmm. So the friends, like, they can get better at the video game to beat their friends. And that kind of goes to be like this culture of competition. We just want to be better than everyone. Yeah.
Didn't you tell me that there are like, YouTube channels out there where you can just watch other people playing these games to learn how to be better?
There are, yeah. There's channels where people will live stream. And so they'll interact with the comments that people are typing in. But people get to watch and study these very good gamers and learn how to become better gamers. Mm-hmm. While also, a lot of these people have, they make money off their YouTube channels. So they are making a full living.
Yeah.
But there's like tons of kids, like every day there's people who are just starting channels hoping to make like a business out of YouTube, because how it works is if you have enough followers, enough viewers, you can have ads placed on your videos. So through Google.
Right. Yeah.
And so the more people who see the ad, the more money that you make.
Mm-hmm. And is it that surprising that people want to play the video game rather than watch it? Because honestly, watching an NFL game in real time, the amount of commercials, the amount of stoppages of play, it's a good Sunday afternoon nap activity, right? Sure. Like it's not much better than golf.
Often my buddies who watch it do so with fast forward. Right?
Totally.
They're constantly fast
set your
forward.
PVR and you start watching it halfway, like at halftime, and then you can fast forward your commercials. And
well, my dad and I do that. We do. We'll record the game, and then it's a 30-second skip button. And so pretty much as soon as the guy gets tackled, you hit skip and it'll almost be right to the beginning.
It's almost perfect. Yeah,
it's almost perfect for most
unless
teams.
they're in the hurry up. Then you have issues.
But then you have because that's an interesting thought too. That it takes it's a 3.5 hour commitment to watch an NFL game.
Yeah.
Or it is a 15-minute commitment to play an NFL game.
Right, because you can set your quarters to like 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
By the way, for those listening, particularly parents, if you want more information about this, because learning how to parent your children on digital devices is incredibly important. And I would recommend a book called Glow Children. It came out not too long ago. Great research, and definitely will give you a lot to think about as you're parenting your children, and even truthfully, even yourself, right, on your devices, and what is healthy digital use and what is not.
And there's also actually a really good... there's some good information on a website called ccef.org. And there's a podcast that just came out. It's about half an hour long called Children and Technology with Julie Lowe. Julie Lowe is a certified biblical counselor, and she does a great job talking about this.
Do you know where she's from by chance?
No, I do not, Andy.
What was her name again?
Her name's Julie Lowe. CCEF's headquarters.
Andy has his phone out and he's currently writing it down. This must be good. friends, you're going to want to listen to this.
Great.
And figure out who Julie
Thanks,
Lowe
Paul.
is.
Yeah, you bet.
And watch that.
Yeah.
Well, guys, here's another topic I want to talk about then. It's slightly related to what we were just talking about with the NFL. Now, Andy, I know you're not much of a sports guy. I know that as far as NFL goes, Tom Brady. You quoted him in your book, by the way.
I did, man. Hey, listen,
Brady,
I don't
your
watch
new
a
book?
lot of sports.
Or thinking?
But I am a fan of Brady,
Thinking.
all right? I'm on the Tom train. I
Yeah?
think he's the greatest quarterback who ever
So how
lived.
many Super Bowls has he won, Andy?
Dude, I'll
many.
have you know that I know that he's won 4,
Wow.
maybe 5. Is it? What
Which
is
one
it?
is it? Which one is it, Andy?
I'm not sure now. I did know. I know that in the book I quote him from CNN where he, or for 60 Minutes where he had 3, and I know that now he has 4. But I think he has got 5, man.
He has 5 now, yeah.
Okay, yes.
After last year, yeah.
Thank you.
What, 5 wins, 3 losses? Is that what
Yeah,
it is?
5 wins, 3 losses.
Yeah.
So pretty quickly could have been a lot of losses too, if not for some last-minute field goals.
I think of last year and then the one against the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But that's not what we want to talk about. We're not here to talk about Tom Brady.
No.
We're here to talk about the protests that are going on in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I think for people who don't really know what's happening, you may notice that this has been going on for over a year, I believe.
Yeah.
Since last year,
Yeah.
there was a lot of
This
tension.
has been going on for a year.
Yeah. So
Well,
last season.
it was a lot more mild, right? You had one guy start it. Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, and he decided to start taking a knee during the anthem rather than standing, which isn't, I know people got really worked up over it, but it was like, he's not leaving the field. He's not turning his back. Like, there were other ways that could have been a lot more.
Legally, it's a form of public protest that he's
Yes.
allowed to have. He has that right.
For sure.
And he has his convictions, and so he's following through on his convictions.
Right.
And so,
Right.
people would say all the power to him.
And his point was basically that for the African American, especially in the South, but in the U.S. for African Americans
U.S.
living
or
down
inner
there,
city. Or,
there are still elements of racism that come through in a systemic way, particularly when dealing with police, things like this. And he was protesting that because, we saw over the last couple of years, we've seen so many videos online of police shooting guys, some in an act of that was justified based on the law, but some definitely not. Mm-hmm. And some of the guys who were killed, some of the black men who were killed illegally by these policemen, the policemen in those cases were then let off and got off on some kind of I don't know the details of all the different cases, but they ended up not getting punished for their actions, even though what they did was murder.
Totally.
So you had Colin Kaepernick kneeling in protest of this. Yeah. Whether you support that or not, like, here it is. These are the facts, right?
And there was a lot of backlash because he was directly, I think, supporting Black Lives Matter, and a lot of people aren't a fan of that. Mm-hmm. Just how they go about operating and their type of protests.
Sure. And when you see people reacting to certain things, it always starts off with a massive reaction, right? Like the pendulum swings a little too far, maybe. And maybe that was what was happening with Black Lives Matters. Maybe it still does that way. But in reality, what black people have to face living, particularly when we lived in Florida, talking with our friends from down there, we got down there right after the Trayvon Martin shooting and after that trial had just finished.
Oh, wow.
While we were there. And that happened in the county just north of where we were. So there was a lot of people talking about that and about the verdict and all that stuff. Our seminary, RTS, held a joint meeting with one of the churches nearby, one of the African American churches, and they had a joint meeting to pray for the community and do all these things to get together as an act of unity, because RTS is a very, white Protestant school traditionally. And they don't want to be seen as that, though. They want to be seen as, listen, like, we care about all people that are made in God's image. We believe black people are made in the image of God, and we want more people to come to understand God in His wholeness, in who He is. God is not racist. Mm-hmm. God is not black, white, like.
That's right.
Right, like God made us whatever color skin we are, whatever our eyes look like, whatever our lips look like. We are made in his image. And this is something that has been not recognized essentially in the South.
Right. That's how they even justified slavery.
Totally.
Is they justified it in that they would affirm what you just said, Paul. They would have said, yes, absolutely, all people are made in the image of God, but those aren't people.
Right. Well, even Darwin's book.
That's right.
The original title, right?
They forget the subtitle.
Yes.
On the origin of species, it's by natural selection or for the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life.
Yeah, right.
And that's the title that they forget, which, interestingly enough, it was Darwin's half-cousin, Francis Galton, who picked that up and would coin the term eugenics, which is Greek for well-born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so, at the heart of this is dehumanization, right?
Totally. Yes.
And at the heart of Christianity, though, is humanization, which is very interesting. And this is one of the things I love about Christianity, is here the Bible's, in verse 26 and 27 of chapter 1 of Genesis, the Bible says, listen, it says it twice. You were made in the image of God, and then says it a second time, both male and female are made in the image of God.
Yes.
And in Hebrew, that does two things. One is it's like an exclamation point when you say it twice.
Repeated, yeah.
Yeah, when you repeat. But then it's making it crystal clear that both men and women are equal in God's eyes,
right.
and that they have been equally made in God's image. And this is an interesting aspect of Christianity that a lot of people don't fully appreciate, is it means then that your view of humanity is directly tied to your view of God. So the greater your view of God, the greater your view of humanity, and the lower your view of God, the lower your view of humanity if you're made in the image of God.
Right.
And when you get that, then all of a sudden the 10 Commandments make a lot more sense when you see God taking the first 4 of those commandments and concerned about your view of him.
Yeah.
It's not because God has an identity crisis.
Right.
It's that God understands that your view of him is going to directly correlate to your view of each other. So you can imagine then, I often think about in Egypt when you have the Israelites that have come out of Egypt. Sorry, I'm thinking of Exodus.
Yeah.
And what do? They go and they make an image of God as what?
Calf.
Yeah, this golden calf, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, really, is that how highly you think of yourself?
Right.
Yeah, like that's it. And, but Christianity is very concerned that you have a high view of God because a high view of God correlates to a high view of humanity.
That makes sense. Even when you look at the 20th century then, and if you think about that, if you have a high view of God, you have a high view of humanity, and you think about the murderous regimes of the Soviet Union, or Mao's China, or Pol Pot, right? You look at the massive devastation that they caused to humanity in those revolutions and subsequent years of rule.
Yep.
And all they viewed the state as the ultimate. They didn't view humanity as being valuable. All you were valuable for was to do something for the state. In
fact, Mao is famously quoted for saying that the Chinese people was like a blank page that he could write whatever characters he wanted. Wow. I mean, that's how he viewed them, is just like you're saying, they're just a blank page.
So when we think of this whole thing about the protesting happening and people... And then you get Trump making the comments this weekend.
So that was the recent thing.
Which is what caused all of these teams to protest.
Yeah, so what Trump basically said was there were more and more players around the league who started kneeling and stuff kind of this season and towards the end of last season.
Yeah.
And Trump went to a rally in Alabama or something like that.
Yep.
And started saying, those SOBs should be fired by their owners for kneeling when the flag is going. And you hear the eruption of what is middle class America for the most part. And so you have the one side, and then you get more teams protesting. You have coaches and owners and stuff saying, you know what, Trump, if that's how it's going to be, we're gonna protest.
Yeah.
And so they've declared war on Trump.
Yeah.
But then
both Republican and Democratic people, by the way, not just isn't.
But then on the other hand, though, you have people who are saying, actually, no, Trump's finally giving us a voice. The people in the middle who say, you know what, I've had family members who have died fighting for this flag, and it means a lot to me. And so for a lot of people, it's like, if you're kneeling during this national anthem, that's detrimental to my family and my legacy. Anyways, the reason I wanted to bring this up is like with the dehumanization thing where we dehumanize humans, it's like you can't even hold an opinion anymore without dehumanizing the other person. Like there's no middle ground here.
Right.
You can't say, like, it's almost, you can't say that I see what's going on here, and I am kneeling, but I'm for both sides. Like you can't. You're one or the other. How do you fix this? How do you deal with this?
Well, it just so happens that last night I was reading Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham prison. If you've ever had a chance to read that letter, it's amazing. But in it, he brings up that same point, Daniel. He says, "Listen, I realize that this protesting isn't good timing." And he's saying, "Listen, I know that you've got your issues and we've got our issues." And he's saying, "But when is a good time to start protesting? When people are being abused and murdered, and we've got going on what we have going on." And so he's saying, listen, there is no good time to protest, and we can't wait. We need to just protest. We need to deal with this. And so, in my opinion, I think one of the privileges you have in a free country is to protest. And I think that one of the aspects of protesting is to bring up issues that are going on in a culture that need to be addressed. And more, we have embraced a culture that doesn't talk to each other anymore. And I think, to me, this protesting is good in that we do need to start talking with each other, and we do need to start working through what's going on here, and to be honest and say, okay, do we have a problem in our legal system? Do we have a problem with our police officers, for example? And if we do, then let's solve that. Let's work to fix this, right? Now that becomes part of my concern, though, is when you have people that just protest to protest, and they don't even understand what they're protesting.
They're no longer talking to each other; they're just talking past each other.
Yeah,
and it's so much noise.
Yep.
And it's how do we mend that? I'm looking at the care pastor right now. How do we mend this?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about, still along the lines of, number one, as people, so for me, as a white guy who was born and raised in Abbotsford, like Mennonite Central, right? You know what I'm saying here, right? Like Abbotsford, I know is a lot more colorful these days, but growing up, just very white, very Christian, and these ideas were kind of foreign, like these whole things. Thinking about, well, yeah, slavery was so far in the past. Like Abraham Lincoln abolished that, so what's the big deal? Well, I mean, it took 100 years to get to the point where Martin Luther King Jr. was able to lead that kind of a protest, and he still got killed for it, right? So you've got like a whole century passes where, yes, these people are technically free, but the systems in place were not showing their true freedom of who they were. And so now here we are, another, 50 years later, 50 whatever years later, and still now you have guys, my friend grew up in Florida, and still now you have him getting pulled over because he drove a Mercedes, because he's a black man driving a Mercedes in Miami, so you must be up to no good. And so he's a Christian guy, he loves the Lord, loves his family, and he has to get out of his car. He's got to put his hands on the hood. He's got to endure a pat down because he knows, he's been told from when he was a kid, do not resist. Do not resist, because these cops will make sure that you are punished for it. And so here we are, right? 150 years since black people have been officially granted freedom by the government, but they really aren't. They don't really have lives of freedom. And now, does that mean that they should react violently or anything? Like, no, you have a right to peaceful protest, which is what we're seeing people do. But then when you get the political leaders stepping into that and saying, oh, they shouldn't do that and they should be fired for it, I mean, you're just alienating people even more. So I think what we can do as people who aren't really entrenched in that where we are, but what white people can do all over North America is just try to understand the history. Try to understand the history of what's happened and how, if your people had been treated historically like this by the government, how would you be feeling right now? And try to put yourself in their shoes and understand and empathize with what's going on. First of all, so try to do that. But then also understand the implications that the gospel should have on this.
And the wonderful tradition we have as Christians of a robust, robust history of people that have sought to humanize and to fight against dehumanization.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't always got it right. There, we've had our issues, but by and large, we have a wonderful tradition of fighting dehumanization.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, you think of William Wilberforce.
Yeah.
Right? Even in terms of animal rights, he was the first guy to bring rights about animals to the government, because stopping people from beating their horses too much.
And even in my own research, I've been amazed. This goes way back. I mean, we go to Augustine, Gregory of Nyssa. I mean, we've been fighting slavery and many other things for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. Cool. So yeah, in all those traditions of all those guys, you've got great Christian men who have really led the way in terms of the humanization against dehumanization. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Paul, I know you don't have a whole lot of time here. If you got to take off,
I've got a meeting.
He's got a meeting. So, if you got to take off, this is a live radio show. So we'll say goodbye to Paul.
Do we want to keep going, or do we?
We keep going, because I want to ask you some stuff, Andy. We got some more time here.
Andy's scared.
Sure, we got a little bit more time.
We got a little bit more time.
Are you okay alone with Daniel? Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm a little scared.
You can hold on to your mug, dude.
All right.
Be careful.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul. Andy, now it's just me and you. Just the two of us. Just a little conversation.
It's getting lonely in here.
Just a little conversation, back and forth. I want to pick your brain a little bit on this question here. You had a question kind of addressed to you, sent in, and asking what is the difference between someone who becomes a Christian and does nothing about it? Is that person saved? The difference between that person and the person who actually does works. Mm-hmm. Because we know that, we're justified in Christ, right? And we're righteous in him. But if we don't do anything about that, are we still saved? Like, for example, someone who becomes a Christian but lies as a vegetable in a hospital bed. They didn't do any good works. Are they Christian?
Right. And I think that one we can just easily deal with, right? Because we would say, listen, of course they're a Christian, because being a Christian isn't about what you do, it's about what God's done. And we are saved not by our works, but by his. We're saved by grace, and that grace is a free gift that we freely receive. We can't earn it. And in the same way, I mean, you can't earn your spouse's love. I mean, if you were to try to earn their love, I mean, it wouldn't be love any longer. Right? I mean, it wouldn't be grace any longer. So, I mean, with somebody like a vegetable or something like that, I mean, somebody who is in a catatonic state, clearly they're saved, because I'm guessing what you're saying is, okay, maybe they accepted Christ as their Savior and then, got in a car accident or something, and they haven't done any good works. I mean, what do you do there? Well, I mean, again, good works has nothing to do with salvation, not your good works, but God's work through Christ on your behalf. And so, on that sense, yeah, you'd be saved. But it seems like the question that was sent in was really focused more on the idea of, okay, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong here.
No, I think I kind of messed that up. But yeah, I think.
But if I'm saved, and I'm saved by grace, and I don't have to do anything to earn it, well, then why do anything at all? Like, can't I just spend the rest of my life doing whatever I want?
Mm-hmm. Let's go that route. Can you spend the rest of your life doing what you want?
Right. And and I think what's being asked then is, can you go on sinning, so that, as Paul would say, so that grace can abound, right? And Paul has to deal with this question in the churches that he's overseeing, and you see him addressing this quite a bit. Not just Paul, but James, the brother of Jesus, deals with this as well. But he comes at it from a different perspective that confuses a lot of people, where James would say, listen, faith without works is dead. And people will struggle with that then, because they'll say, well, which is it? Is it grace or is it works? Like, what is it? And to me, I think marriage is just such a helpful example of the gospel. And you see this again through the Gospels, that the New Testament, that Jesus is constantly referred to as the and the church is constantly referred to as the bride of Christ, and you see this marriage illustration continually used. And I think it's a helpful one. And it works quite simply that when my wife and I, Nancy and I, got married, we got married not because of what great things that she's done or will do in the future. Because, by the way, that's called a contract. And the New Testament is the new covenant. It's not the new contract. It's the new covenant. And a covenant relationship is not a contractual relation. It's not a series of clauses. If you do this, if you do that, then this will happen. The gospel is based on a relationship. It's a covenant in which we have a relationship with God, not by anything that we have done or can do, but simply because we are loved by God and the work that Jesus has done on our behalf. And so that then is the grace that has been extended to us, that by faith we can have a relationship with God. And in the same way that I can, when I marry my wife, when I married her, I didn't marry her based on a contract. I married her based on a covenant. That this was a covenant where she was extending to me her love, and I had the joy of receiving that and embracing that. And I think that's the beauty of it, right? Is that she loves me. It's not conditional. It's the fact that she loves me, right? Now, here's the question then. Is in that marriage relationship or the relationship that we have with God, what do we do in light of that? So what do I do in light of the fact that my wife loves me? Do I not love her? Do I cheat on her? Do I, do whatever I want to do, never come home, not watch, not help with, the kids or whatever, the list can go on.
Totally.
And as that would be a contract, right? She could take me back to the contract and be like, I did this, you're not doing this, this, and this. And it's like, no, this isn't a contract. This is a covenant. This is a relationship. And a relationship, when somebody loves you, and I think this is actually way more powerful than a contract. When somebody loves you and they love you unconditionally, this inspires us to love each other back. This is how a relationship works. This is how a covenant works, is we remain faithful to one another because of not that, and this is critical in Christianity, we love God not because of how great we are, but as John explains in 1 John, we love because we were first loved by God. God loved us, and in doing so, he's taught us and inspired us and helped us so that we can love him. Not because I have to, this is critical, and I think this is what James is getting at, but because I want to. That works will follow, not because it has to, because you've already got grace, but because you want to, because of the grace you've received. Yeah. And this is where I think a lot of people get it wrong. And they can even get this wrong in marriage as well. I love my wife not because I have to. I love her because I want to. And this is the kind of relationship that we're in. It's a covenant relationship, not a contractual relationship.
Dude, I like that. And I like what you said about it inspires you to want to do it. And I think, for sure, if you're uninspired to love your wife back, that might mean that you might not really love her.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with God, and that's going to strain the relationship.
That's right. I mean, think about any relationship where you're not receiving anything back. I mean, what would you start to think? Do you actually love me? And I think this is where that question then can get rooted is, listen, if you claim to have a relationship with God, but you don't love God and you don't love people that God loves people. I mean, like, if you don't love what God loves, you have to start to ask yourself, do I actually love God? Am I actually in a relationship with God? I mean, maybe it's that you actually have a contractual relationship with God. And
which is religion, isn't it?
That's right, which is religion. And I think that's something that we need to think about. So just to come back to it then, it means that you're not loving God because you have to. We love God because we want to, and in loving God, in loving people, it is a further testament to the relationship, the covenantal relationship that we have with God.
And I don't know if I could have said it any better. In fact, that was just brilliant. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Here's some money.
Yeah.
Actually, I brought Daniel banana bread.
You said $10, Andy. Yeah. No, Andy did bring down banana bread, which I'm a big sucker for. So if you want to bring in banana bread to the extra podcasts, mail that in.
That's the way to win Daniel's heart, and I would like the listeners to know that he is single. He is available. Is that actually true? Are you?
Yes.
Okay, I thought, maybe.
You literally do this every time.
Like, maybe
we should sign off now.
Daniel.
We should sign off now. This has been a great radio show. And just as, we talk about loving God, we love doing this podcast. And,
we sure do, Daniel.
If we didn't love doing this podcast, we wouldn't be here doing it, would we, Andy? Or maybe it's a contract. I don't know. Those are the mysteries that we seek to unlock next week on our live radio show on the program. Thank you for listening, and we shall chat next week.